Hey guys, it's Pablo with Meditation Amsterdam, and today I want to share with you a rather special video about an insight that has been simmering in my mind for the past few days. This doesn't often happen, but this is the third time I record this video, and it's for a couple of reasons. One, I think it's very, very important and different from most of the stuff that I describe in this channel. And secondly, because it's a bit of it's very counterintuitive, and I've tested this with two or three friends with whom I typically discuss complicated topics, and it bounced every time. So I'm treading on very shaky ground here, making this video, but I thought I would share this with you because I believe it is one of the most important insights I've come across. And what it is in essence about, and hence the title of the video, "The Strangest Advice You'll Ever Receive," is proposing a use of our mental powers in a way that is very different from what we grew up doing. What I'm proposing in essence, in case you're in a hurry, but I really do invite you to watch until the end because it's a little bit counterintuitive. I'm essentially proposing to use our powers of imagination to imagine what's actually happening instead of imagining something else. And I am suggesting to use our willpower to role play our current life and our current character as opposed to role playing something else. And it sounds like a completely useless thing to do. Why would you imagine what's already happening? If it's already happening, there's no need to imagine it. Why would you role play your current self if you're already acting that way? That would be the normal questions that come up from this. Now, in order to unpack what the reason why I'm proposing this, and so you need to stick with me for a while on this, is a couple of things. First of all, I picked imagination and willpower as the yin and yang expressions of how we typically use our mind. Imagination we use to go elsewhere. Willpower we use in order to manipulate and exact change on ourselves or our environment, right? So it's about departure or forceful doership, if you want to see it that way, yin or yang. And now if we look at the usual story of how our early developmental years, how they unfold, there is an inherent strategy that we adopt to navigate our toddler years and our childhood. And it's a strategy that's a winning strategy. And it's the strategy of, I'll just fantasize when I can't change things, but when I can change things, I will manipulate and try to coerce things so that they go my way. Those are our essential two options. Those are the two options that we use. And it's a winning strategy for a couple of reasons that I can think of. One, we are dealing with two factors in the equation. Call it three. One factor is how we feel and what we want. And the other two factors are each of our parents, right? So in our environment, we are really dealing with two factors. And there's a third factor, which is ourselves. The two external factors, which are our parents, and this is the other important element here, are exceptionally highly influenceable by what we do. They love us, they care for us, they're willing to sacrifice a lot for our well-being, whether it is emotional or physical. And so we are dealing with very few factors, two, both of which are very highly influenceable by our little tantrums, manipulative tactics, and the rest. Now, take that strategy for winning in that environment. Fast forward 25 years. You are now, I don't know, in your late 20s or you name it. And you are trying to use mental distraction and manipulative coercion to navigate your life. And you're going to find that, number one, nobody gives a damn about you. So the factors that you're dealing with are very difficult to influence, very hard to influence. And number two, they have multiplied infinitely. There's infinite amount of stakeholders, family members, people that we need to deal with. So how many balls do we need to juggle in that scenario, and how much can we actually influence them? And yet, in spite of all obvious evidence, we still try to use the toddler strategy, but it has become unconsciously ingrained in the way we go about life. So if we go back to what I'm suggesting about the use of imagination and willpower, it has a lot to do with a reframing of what is the correct use of our mental powers, away from a winning strategy of distraction and coercion, and towards a winning strategy in which we use our mental powers first and foremost to align with the grain of reality, as opposed to use them to constantly try to depart from it, which is what we have learned as toddlers. Because the factors in the equation are now infinite and hard to influence, or almost impossible to influence, and our mental capacity is limited. That mental capacity, used for coercion and fantasy, makes us win as a toddler, but it will make us lose as a grown-up. But we rarely make that mental flip. We insist in trying to use our capacity for imagination and willpower to effect a strategy that was a winning strategy in a very different environment than the one we find ourselves in when we are grown adults. But the flip side to this coin is to embrace a very strange use of the mind. Because if I told you to use your imagination to imagine what's already happening, your first reaction would be, what's the use? It's already happening, so why do I need to imagine it? If I told you to use your willpower to enact the role that you are already playing in life, you would say, what's the use? I'm already playing that role. And before I dive a little bit deeper into each of those, I'll give you the answer to that as well, at least in the way that I'm thinking about it as of late. And that is that when you use your imagination to imagine what is happening already, you come to realize that what is, between quotes, happening in the world was nothing other than an unconscious use of your imagination. For this, we have to go a little bit into detail, as I said, but so when it comes to imagination, the reason to use it for projecting the current world is because that helps us realize that that's what we had been doing all along. Except now we're doing it consciously. And when we use our willpower to role play who we currently are, we come to realize that we had always been role playing, but it had been also unconscious, you see? And therefore, when we start to actively role play our current character, the character nature of the character becomes apparent. So what I'm proposing here, in a sense, is that our most wholesome and effective use of mental powers, which we currently use to either disconnect or try to manhandle reality forcefully, be first and foremost used to align with the current grain of reality, that we may be in line with what is first, before we start getting ideas about how the power of our imagination can change the way things are, or how we can affect that change through use of our willpower. I've never heard anywhere anyone say, use your imagination to picture the way things currently are. Now, I'm not claiming originality in the principle that I'm proposing here. It's simply perhaps a bit of a funny an interesting way to position it. A little bit of storytelling goes. I've also never heard anyone say role play yourself as you currently are. It's very counterintuitive. It seems like a completely superfluous exercise. And yet, if you consider it carefully, what I'm suggesting here is use your mental powers, both yin and yang mental powers, to double down on reality, as opposed to using it to deny the way things are. We are so damn busy with what can be, could be, should be, what happens next, and the way we're going to do it, that we never use our mental powers to first land on the way things are. And what I'm proposing here is 2 ways in which we can first land. You know, the way we deal with current reality is almost the way somebody deals when they want to travel to a different country. And you go, well, you know, the first thing you got to do to get to that different country is you need to arrive at the departure station. And then people go like, yeah, but the station is smelly and is full of people and I hate this and I hate that and the other. Therefore, I just want to get there. It's like, yeah, but the station, you know, the station, right? Like the station is where you depart from it. How can you depart if you can't truly make it to the station and fully acknowledge it there? So our mental powers are always oriented elsewhere, and I'm simply advocating for a reorientation of the mental powers to first get here and to not do it passively or reluctantly, but to do it with a sense of co-creatorship and agency. When you start to visualize mentally what's already in front of you as if you were visualizing mentally, you realize that that's what you were doing subconsciously all along, except that now you are engaged with it. And there's a certain relationship that we have to our imaginations. Our attention becomes engrossed in whatever our mind is visualizing. So visualize this. Visualize this instead. Don't visualize something else. Start by visualizing this. I mean, all this advice from Manly P. Hall and Dale Carnegie or Neville Goddard or whoever, all these old old teachers of perennial philosophy were about, use the power of your imagination to imagine something else, a better future, right? Like more prosperity or whatever, all this sort of prosperity gospel type stuff. Never did they ever consider to say, use the powers of your imagination to mentally project this, that you may come to notice that that's what you had been doing all along. You double down on reality to finally land, but to land with a sense of agency and co-authorship. The same goes for role-playing. There's been an abuse of the technique, to my mind, to say, well, you can role-play, fake it till you make it, is the ultimate slogan of role-playing. You act as if you are someone else doing something else, reacting in a different way. But I say, act as if you are reacting in the way you are reacting. See what happens then? Something very strange happens then, because then the entire act is given up. If you get together with your friends, do a thought experiment. You get together with your friends and you decide that you're going to do a little theater play. Somebody's going to play the butler, somebody's going to play the cop, somebody's going to play the damsel in distress, but you are going to play yourself. But it's got to be a high fidelity representation of yourself, though. You're going to say what you typically say. You're going to feel the way you typically feel. You're going to react the way you typically react. The moment you start doing that, it feels completely disingenuous. In fact, you could try this. Next time you find yourself reacting or being angry about something, try enacting the role of being angry like yourself. And immediately the entire thing collapses. You can't do it. You can't do it because the first reaction is subconscious, and it continues to be subconscious thereon, which is the way most of us live our lives. But if you are consciously enacting it, but not consciously enacting it in a different way, consciously enacting it in the current way, you double down on reality as it is. In this case, that's your internal reality. Now you come to see that you were always enacting it. And you start to wonder if it was by choice or by habit. And do I have to keep doing this? It feels weird to keep now reacting or being angry because now I'm kind of doing it on purpose. So the funny thing about this is the reason it works, and I've been trying it for the past few days and it's been revelatory. It works because it has yin yang. In other words, you are fully engaged, but you are engaged in meeting reality as it is, as opposed to either disengaging and fantasizing about something else or engaging with a manipulative intent. It also has the peculiar quality that it gets you out of the observer trap. Right? So if you've been doing mindfulness for a while, they tell you, well, be the observer of your feelings, the dispassionate observer. I say if you've done that for a while, and who knows, maybe doing that for a while is a precursor to what I'm explaining here. Maybe this is a step too far already, something to consider, right? Because it just happened to me. I didn't invent this. It's something that started to happen. It might be a byproduct indeed of all the shadow work and all the dispassionate observation. But if you've done that enough, there comes a point where you want to re-embody and actively have a sense of agency and authorship in the way you are, regardless how you are. Regardless how you are. That you may unify with that which is unconscious by meeting it as it is. I often try an experiment when I'm working with people and we're doing, getting our first acquaintance with somatics, with feeling in the body when you have an emotion. And very often we do this with the body, which is one of the easiest ways to do. So if I say, for example, okay, so, can you feel what it was like when this person treated you this way? And so people say well, I felt offended, I felt, mistreated, whatever. And I say, no. Feel it in your body. What does your body feel like? And they go, there's a contraction in my throat, for example. And I say, well, I want you to observe that contraction, and I want you to now trust that what the body is doing is correct. And I want you to help the body do it. But I want you to help the body do it exactly as it is being done. So you observe the place of the contraction in your body as well as you can. And I want you to now voluntarily do that contraction in the same place, with the same direction, quality, intensity, as the body is already doing it, to the point where the difference between the body reactively contracting the throat and you contracting it on purpose starts, where the line starts to blur between those two. Where it is literally impossible to distinguish whether it is happening to you or you are doing it, because you have met it and you have calibrated to exactly what's happening. So there's a sense of authorship and there's a handshake being made. In the process of doing that. Now, just as you can do that somatically, you can also do it with your imagination. The way we are subconsciously projecting a world out of our mental fragmentation can be met by using imagination to imagine exactly this. And you can also do it with your personality or your emotions. You can role play and enact them as they are, but you do it consciously and without resistance, because you're trying to hit that mark. You're trying to hit the mark of what is and doubling down on reality and using your mental powers for that purpose. And from there on, once that handshake is made, now the system, now the thinker and the one who thinks it should be this way or whatever, and the subconscious part that was misfiring and doing whatever they want, we've created a handshake between those two. We cannot move forward without that handshake happening first. And therefore, it might be the strangest advice you ever hear. I certainly have not heard it being said this way, but to imagine what is as it is and to role play yourself as you are is the correct use of the imaginative and willpower capacities of the mind. That you may meet reality and use your mind to meet reality as it is, because our mental powers are limited, and reality is unlimited and very difficult to influence. So our first order of affairs is to meet it as it is, as a winning strategy of how to use the mind. So there you have it. That's the thought. I think I might have actually succeeded in explaining it the way I wanted to this time around. I hope that is the case, but I'll hear from your comments, I'm sure. So just hit me with it. Tell me what you think about this. I think I'm really onto something here. Sounds pretty interesting anyway. And if you think that this content is useful, might help others, then your liking, sharing, and subscribing is always highly appreciated. I'll be back with more videos pretty soon. Thanks for listening so far. If you did, cheerio and bye-bye.